guys, what's up? My name is Elizabeth and welcome to my YouTube channel. So, since March is Women's History Month, I thought it was no better time to talk about Baptist women of the Southern Baptists. Now, there's not much about women of the Southern Baptists due to the fact that they kind of don't show up in historical textbooks. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Many of them were backstage people, as in, yes, the men got the name, but if it wasn't for the women of the Women Missionary Union gathering the money to send these missionaries across the sea, the missionaries couldn't have done what they've done. I think that's one thing interesting I think about women throughout all of history, is that if there wasn't these godly women, we wouldn't have these godly men who stood up and preached. For instance, I can think of John Wesley and Charles Wesley. Even though they are technically considered in the Methodist group, they do still influence my personal faith, and I think all Baptist faiths. So with that being said, let's just jump right in and get started with Baptist women. Okay, y'all, so it was 1885. It was a Southern Baptist Convention meeting, and these men gathered into a church building to discuss issues, discuss what they would be doing for the next year. And so the question was brought up, who can be a messenger? Now, if you don't know what a messenger is in the Southern Baptist Convention, a messenger is pretty much someone who's a member of a Southern Baptist church who is part of the Southern Baptist Convention. So you can technically be a Southern Baptist church without being part of the Southern Baptist Convention, which means you don't actually go to the meeting. But for the churches that are Southern Baptist who fund the Southern Baptist Convention, has people, they send them to the Southern Baptist Convention meeting. Now, the question is, who can those people be? Now, let me just tell you this quickly, is that technically the people who are sent aren't technically representing their local church. They represent themselves and what they personally believe. So no, it's not like we vote on who's going to be sent and then they have to speak on behalf of the people. The person is individual and they speak on their personal own conviction during the meeting. Now, back to the messenger. Who can be the messenger? So pretty much in essence, the question is, who can vote? Now, that might seem like a silly question, but back in 1885, before women had the right to vote, the question was still at hand. Can women have the right to vote? Can women be messengers? So the answer to that question was no. And to go beyond the answer of no, they decided to change the word messengers to brethren to clarify that it's only men who can vote during the meeting. One of the quotes that I found during my research that was kind of funny, but was true. And it says this. It was by a guy who said this: "I love the ladies, but I dread them worse." In essence, what the writer who interpreted this sentence of the original writer pretty much said, we love you, but we also fear you, we dread you. The solution was the Women's Missionary Union. See, since the women couldn't be part of the convention, the annual meeting, they decided to create their own meeting, quote unquote. So in the Methodist basement across the street from the church that the men were at, they formed their meeting in 1888, forming the Women's Missionary Union. And during these meetings, they created their annual report. But since they were women and they could not speak in front of men at the time, they had to have a man read the annual report for 40 years. And when women were finally allowed to talk, they went from the sanctuary to the Sunday school to prevent the women from speaking behind the pulpit, because speaking behind the pulpit kind of symbolized a lot of a pastoral authority, and the men just did not want that to happen. Another instance where in 1888 there was a woman missionary who was a veteran from Brazil. And the president found 2 loopholes for this woman to speak. And the first loophole was that the church was outside. So, because the church was so big, they had to have an outside meeting, so the woman wouldn't be standing behind the pulpit, the picture of pastoral authority. And number 2, it was during Sunday school hours and not preaching hours. So again, doesn't look like the woman's preaching. 2 famous women, one that represents the Northern Baptist and one that represents the Southern Baptist. And I'm going to actually speak about both because originally Northern Baptist and Southern Baptist were just one Baptist. However, now they are completely split over a couple of different issues. And if you're wondering, can they ever come back and reconcile? The answer is no, because it's no longer just involves slavery or the inadequate support from the Northern Baptists. It has to do now with theological issues of, well, one of them is women, actually. So, no, they can't really reconcile with each other. There would be a lot of problems with that. Anyhow, so the first foreign missionary in the Baptist was Anna Judson. Originally, she did not want to be Baptist, but her husband did end up becoming Baptist, and as she studied scripture and read, she decided to join the Baptist. It was in 1814 Baptist General Missionary Convention that adopted or took in her husband as a missionary. Now, during this time, missionary wives weren't always considered missionaries. Sometimes they were part of just a dependent of their husband. But for Anna Judson, she didn't take that in. She considered herself a full-fledged missionary, and she took it so far. She dealt with a lot of illness. Her hair started to fall out. So she's one of the women pioneers. We have the Moon sisters, and there's 3 of them actually. One of them we're going to actually talk more in depth about, who actually has an annual offering named after her. But let's start with Oriana. I believe that's how you say her name. She's actually from the Church of Christ, so that's a different denomination. And she worked with the medical missionaries in Jerusalem. Then there's Lottie Moon, who ended up being very unsuited of being a missionary in China. But what she did be able to do was recruit her sister, Charlotte Moon. So Lottie Moon was born in December 12, 1840. Now it's kind of interesting that she was actually born in December, because it's actually in December do we have our Christmas offering that's actually named after her. Anyhow, she was born in December 12, 1840 in Albemarle County, Virginia. Now, Lottie Moon wasn't always so strong in her faith. And if anything, she was the wild child. She was the one who skipped all the different chapels that no one could possibly see her probably being a missionary. I mean, what people literally had to do was just kept praying for her that she'll find her way. And one day, while she couldn't sleep because of dogs barking, she was going to go over to the revival to actually mock the people. But it was during that revival, in that revival time, that she actually gave her life to Christ. And she ended up becoming a missionary in China when her sister, Eddie, recruited her. She ended up going to Albemarle Female Institute, and she was the first woman in the South to receive a master's degree. Pretty interesting, right? First woman in the South to receive a master's degree. So she's a Christian and she received her first master's degree. Pretty much grateful for Women's History Month to put that in the records. She served in China's Shantung province for 39 years. She taught in a girls' school, and she actually turned down marriage. Right before she left, she actually turned down a marriage. One thing that she did do that is quite important is that she adopted the Chinese culture. And during that time, many of the missionaries went to the foreign countries, but they still kept a lot of their culture with them, which ended up being a very blocker to be able to reach the people. They found out later on that adopting their culture, not adopting the unbiblical part, but the things that's only cultural and nothing that's against biblical, they do that, they actually reach the people a lot better because it means that you care about the people. It means that you want to learn about their culture, their language. You want to be part of them instead of going, oh, I'm just standing here, I'm not going to even change. Like, I could talk about that whole nother subject, why we should just understand other people's culture, and even sometimes to a point to adopt their culture. She sent many letters to America asking for prayer, for missionary support, for money, and it was through this prayer and help that Annie Armstrong actually helped to fund missions. And we're going to be talking, and she's the next woman that we're actually going to be talking about. She died at the age of 72 due to illness and declining health. In 1888, Southern Baptist women had organized and helped collect $3,315. And in 1980, the Women's Missionary Union named the annual Christmas offering for the international missions after her, Annie Armstrong. Now, she's pretty tall, very tall in comparison to Lottie Moon, who is very short. I actually got to stand next to her full-size Lottie Moon in the New York Baptist Convention that my mother used to work at. Anyhow, back to Annie Armstrong. So, Annie Armstrong started Bayview Mission for Baltimore Poor Addict. She was also the first executive of the Women's Missionary Union. She initiated fundraising brick cards to build churches in Cuba, gained support for the first black female missionaries. We just had Black History Month, literally last month in February. And she secured funds to relieve China missionary work, one of them for Lottie Moon, who had served for 11 years without a furlough. She advocated for Native Americans and impoverished mountain people. And in 1934, she was honored with the Home Missions Offering, was renamed for her to encourage more to follow her sacrificial example. Now, the Home Missionary Offering is now called the North American Missions, and it's for the Easter offering. Christmas, Lottie Moon, International Mission Board. Then we have Annie Armstrong, Easter, North American Mission Board. So, just some quick final things here. Forgotten history of Baptist women. So there was a time where women did serve as deacons. Some still do, and there's nothing that says against it, even though it's kind of rare to see that. Women were pastors at one time until the Baptist Faith and Message clarified that the office of pastor should only be for men, even though now there's still some women who are pastors. And that also means that women are no longer chaplains, even though they used to be, because if you're a chaplain, you're a pastor, in essence. And last but not least, women used to be Bible teachers in seminary, but due to the Baptist Faith and Message, and all seminaries have to sign and agree with the Baptist Faith and message, many of the women's job was declined nowadays. So, due to the going back to more conservative ways. So, as I said, the 21st century stance on women says this in the article for the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. While both men and women are gifted for service in the church, the office of pastor is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. And so that kind of leaves us to next week of what does it look like for women to serve God, for women to work in ministry, and what's the whole viewpoint of women not being pastors and all? You know, is that unfair? That's injustice? Is that even sexist? Is that patriarchy? I mean, trust me, I've gone through all these questions before. And so we're going to be talking about that. We'll also go back to talking a little bit about complementarianism, which I kind of started to introduce in my head covering video. And so these series are all about what does it really mean to be a woman. I didn't mean to have the series like this, but it kind of ended up being that series. So I hope you buckle up your seatbelt as we talk about next week some really hard questions all about women, gender wars, sexes, and what does it look like for a woman in the 21st century in the church. I know I said a lot in this video, and I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope this video didn't discourage you after you found out that some of Southern Baptists could be a little quote-unquote old-fashioned, but trust me, they aren't old-fashioned. Trust me, they have gone leaps and bounds when it comes to women, and there's still many doors open to women, which we're going to be talking about in the next video in next week. So if you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comment down below. Remember to subscribe, push that bell button to get notification, and check out this poem that I actually wrote to my mother on my website. And I think that's pretty much it. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!